The question that should have been easy to answer. It was Tuesday. Standard, middle-of-the-week, ordinary. The kind of day where the school cafeteria smells like warmed-over fish sticks and sour apple juice, and the most exciting thing happening is a dodgeball stuck in the gym rafters. Miss Dalton's third-grade class was outside for their morning recess. Kids clustered around tetherballs, monkey bars, and faded chalk lines, while a small group sat under the red oak tree near the fence, where it was shady, quieter, and you could hear your own thoughts. 8-year-old Jamal Daniels was part of that group. Smart, sharp-eyed, never late. He had questions about everything. Why squirrels don't fall out of trees, why Mr. Thompson's car backfired every morning, why the lunch lady always wore 2 hairnets. But today his question wasn't about lunch or trees. He sat beside his best friend, Sophia, and asked out loud, like it was just another curiosity, "Hey, why are all the janitors and lunch ladies black or Mexican, and all the principals and office ladies white?" The words hung in the air like someone had opened a window in winter. Sophia blinked. A few other kids looked up from their crackers. "I mean, it's just weird," Jamal added. "Like, they work just as hard. Why don't they get to be in charge?" Before anyone could respond, Mr. Brinks, the yard supervisor, had already turned his head. His walk-over was slow but firm, like someone ready to put a lid on something he didn't even taste yet. "What was that you just said, Jamal?" "Nothing bad, sir. I was just asking why—" Brinks raised a hand. "That's not a conversation for recess or school. That's for home." Jamal tilted his head. "But we're at school most of the day. Isn't this where we're supposed to learn stuff?" Brinks paused. Eyes narrowed. "Some things you keep to yourself." He turned to the other kids. "Everyone, let's keep things respectful. Back to your games." But the silence didn't go back to the games. It followed Jamal through the rest of the day. By lunchtime, word had spread, not in loud whispers or dramatic retellings, just those sideways glances, those unfinished sentences. "Did you hear what he said something about—" At 2:30 p.m., Jamal was pulled from class. Principal Vance asked him to step into the office. White woman, mid-50s, pastel sweater, tight, polite smile. Sitting beside her was the district liaison, Mr. Kellner, stiff suit, pale knuckles, no warmth in his greeting. "Jamal," the principal began, "we've heard that you made a comment." "Alicia Daniels! Nurse, wears her name badge even when she's off shift. She walked into the office and saw her son sitting alone. 'What's going on here?' Principal Vance stood. 'There's been a misunderstanding.' 'Misunderstanding of what?' 'My son can't ask why all the people in charge are white. That's what this is about?' Kellner tried to interject. 'Mrs. Daniels, we're trying to maintain an inclusive and calm environment. Inclusive doesn't mean silent. It doesn't mean you make my son feel like he did something wrong just for noticing what's right in front of his face.' The room froze. Vance tapped her pen. Kellner cleared his throat. No apology followed. They let Jamal go with a note, "We appreciate respectful curiosity." But the next day, the school newsletter had a new section titled, "Creating Positive Conversations, What Not to Say at School." Under it, "Avoid political, racial, or culturally charged questions. during school hours. His words were now policy. At recess, some kids avoided him, others stared. Even Sophia didn't sit next to him at lunch. Jamal didn't get angry. He got quiet, observant. He saw Miss Clark, the black custodian, wiping gum from under desks while white administrators walked past her without saying good morning. He saw cafeteria workers hustling trays while the assistant principal barked into her Bluetooth about conference calls. He saw everything and remembered it all. The question still sat in his chest, not because he regretted asking, but because no one ever answered. We've only just started this story, but believe me, it's going to get even more intense. Stay to find out what happens when the hero is confronted with even greater injustice. A word has consequences. On Monday morning, the school library was unusually quiet. The bookshelves stood like mute witnesses to the events of Friday's meeting, and the air seemed to retain echoes of the question that shocked the entire school. Jaden walked down the hallway, feeling the stares on him. Not angry, not approving, but rather wary. It was as if everyone was trying to figure out if he would become a problem or an example. The social studies lesson began, as usual, with notebooks, pens, and a formal sit-down. Mrs. Carlyle, a white woman in her 50s, has always been considered strict but fair. However, she avoided Jaden's gaze today. When one of the students tried to return to the Friday topic, she abruptly cut him off. "We have already discussed this issue. Let's focus on the lesson." Jaden, as he promised himself, wasn't going to be silent. He raised his hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you said you discussed it. But with whom?" There was silence in the classroom. The notebooks froze, heads turned. Mrs. Carlyle stiffened. "I meant that the administration has already decided not to return to this. But we students," Jaden added quietly, "were not involved in this decision." Several of the guys nodded. A few averted their eyes. But it was clear it would not work to remain silent any longer. At lunchtime, while most of the school was filling the cafeteria, Jaden gathered a small group of classmates in a corner near the music hall. Malachi was with them, a talented violinist whom the director once refused to allow to perform for technical reasons. With them was Keisha, the editor of the school newspaper, who was twice rejected for materials about cultural events of the African American community. David was with them, a quiet guy to whom a labor teacher once said, "I'm not sure this is for you." They discussed the idea of not a rally, not a protest, but an open conversation. Keisha suggested, "We can organize a question day. One day, anyone can ask any question to the administration, openly, honestly." "Do you think they'll let us?" Malachi asked doubtfully. "I don't know," she said. "But if we don't try, we won't know." Jaden nodded. "So, here we go." They started with petitions, not online, but real ones, on paper. Jaden printed out the forms, Keisha handed out pens, and David drew posters. They walked around the classrooms, talked to the students, tried not to be intrusive, but confident. The reactions were different. "Finally, someone brought up this topic," said the boy from 11B. "I don't want any problems with the teachers." Jaden got a call at the principal's office right after first period. In the reception area, he was greeted by Mrs. Elderson, the secretary, with a tense face. "Wait a minute," she said. "You weren't called alone." One by one, they pulled up behind him. Keisha, Maliki, David. 3 more guys. All participants of the initiative. They were invited into the office. Mr. Hall, the director, Mrs. Wilson, the deputy, and the discipline counselor were waiting for them there. "We've heard about your idea," Hall began without making eye contact. "And we should inform you that such initiatives need to be coordinated in advance." "We tried," Keisha said. "No one answered us." "Because it's provocative," Wilson interjected. "You're creating tension." Jaden clenched his fists in his lap. He didn't scream. He didn't argue. "We just want to hear the answers and to give others the opportunity to be heard." "Have you thought about what it looks like for the administration?" Wilson said. "You're making us look like racists." "We didn't say that," Maliki interjected. "We asked a question. You draw conclusions." Mr. Hall sighed. "You are temporarily suspended from participating in school events until we find out." The silence in the room fell like a wall. David almost screamed. Keisha coughed. Only Jaden remained calm. "We get it," he said. They left the office and stood in silence in the hall. "They want us to shut up," Keisha said. "But we started," Jaden replied softly. "And now it's impossible to stop." We are on the verge of a climax. What's going to happen now is going to change everything. You just can't miss the denouement of this story. Silence is louder than a scream. The bell for class sounded as if nothing had happened, but everything has changed. The corridors became different. The views have changed. The words remained the same, but the pauses between them were now heavier than air. James walked through the school and for the first time felt like not just a student, but something much more, and dangerous, for someone. Miss Carter, the same teacher who led the class during Malcolm's question, didn't say a word. The next day, she did not mention either the question or the answer, or even the child himself. She looked through them. But the children were no longer the same, and James saw more fear in that silence than in any scream. After school, Malcolm walked beside him, waving his backpack and looking up at the sky. It was as if nothing special had happened, but James knew his question wasn't just in the classroom. He flew around the classrooms, hung out in the staff room, sat quietly in the director's mail, and echoed in the parent chats. And finally, he fell. On Friday afternoon, James was called to the principal's office. He walked slowly, his heart beating steadily, like a drummer at a funeral. The director, a white man with a hairstyle from the 90s and the look of a man who doesn't have enough time to talk about morality, didn't look up. "Mr. Clark," he began, folding his hands, "I hear you're active, participate in discussions. This is, of course, commendable, but some questions are not for the school level. Do you understand?" "I didn't ask any questions," James replied calmly. "I just suggested that the class think about it." "Well, you know," the director grinned, you're provoking me. You're inciting. We don't want children. We felt uncomfortable, especially the other kids, other children." This phrase sounded like a sentence. James was silent because he realized that anything he said would be used against him. "We want you to temporarily suspend your extracurricular activities," the principal added, "and refrained from social topics in public discussions. We don't want conflicts." James nodded. "Not because I agree, but because I knew that the fight wasn't in this office. He is where the students see, hear, and feel, and silence is also a weapon, but not his." The next day, he posted a short post in the school group. Why didn't anyone answer Malcolm's question? Why is no one interested in who makes decisions in the school, the district, the city? 2 hours later, the post had garnered over 200 likes. Comments poured in, some in support, others in annoyance. It's not your school to dictate the rules. You just want attention. Maybe you should be grateful that you're even studying here. But there were others. Thank you for not being silent. And then the chain reaction began. Students from different classes began to ask who made up the school's board. Who chooses the teachers? Who makes decisions about school curricula? Why are there no portraits of black graduates on the walls? On Monday, in the hallway where the photos of the best students of the year always hung, someone carefully attached a photo of Malcolm. Below is the caption, "He asked a question. Will you answer?" James stood and looked at the photo, and one of the teachers, Mr. Harper, an elderly black history teacher, stopped by. He looked at the picture, then at James. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "I've been silent for too long." After that, James was given the floor at the school board meeting. He came out calm and restrained as always, and he started with a simple phrase. "I don't need you to agree with me. I need you to hear us." He wasn't talking about skin color, but about equality. Not about guilt, but about responsibility. Not about fighting, but about the right to be seen, respected, enabled. Some of the administration looked right through him, but for the first time, someone was watching carefully. No one applauded after the meeting, but there was something different in the eyes of the students, something new, something that you hadn't allowed yourself to feel before. Hope, respect, power. The following week, Malcolm was called back to the board, and this time he said, "I have a question again. Only now do I know that we have the right to ask."